Hello, it's Stuart from the Courtyard Kitchen. Every now and then it's nice to get away from fancy food and have something that's really simple but really tasty. And that's what I'm going to make today. With these ingredients I'm going to make one of my favourites, French onion soup. And it's a little bit like having a casserole, it's a meal in one big dish. Couple of cloves of garlic. I've preheated the saucepan. First things is to put in a knob of butter and a couple of tablespoons of olive oil. It's only taken a couple of minutes. The butter has melted. The oil is just about starting to sizzle, and the most important stage here is obviously cooking off the onions. Sizzling nicely in the saucepan. You cannot rush this stage because this is where the soup gets all of its flavour from. It's probably going to take a good 15 minutes, so keep an eye on your onions. At this stage I'll put the garlic in, let that saute and infuse its flavour. Onions are in with the garlic in the oil and the butter, and I'm going to give them a good turn over to coat them in the butter, because that will start the beginning of the caramelizing process. Just checking the onions, they are starting to soften, but not really taking on a great deal of colour just yet. Caramelizing onions can seem a little bit scary because essentially what you're doing is a controlled burn. Onions actually contain quite a bit of sugar, and what you're actually doing is getting that sugar through the heat in the pan to actually burn effectively, and that's where you get the browning. What has happened here is that the onions have cooked down a lot. It's nothing like they're almost half a pan of raw onion within. It's always the case with onions, and they're also as well starting to change colour. Very nearly there with the onions. On the bottom of the pan you can see a few dark lines of caramelised onion, basically. Keep those moving and it all just adds to the rich colour that the onions are coming, and we're very nearly ready to move on. Excellent, that's the onions caramelised really well. They've reduced right down. A good tablespoon of plain flour. Mix that in. At this stage it's almost like making a roux for a sauce. Let that cook off for just a couple of seconds. Completely optional. I'm going to put in about half a glass of red wine. You do not have to do that at all. As with any soup, it relies for a lot of its flavour on stock. In the case of French onion soup, it's beef stock that I use. I think you do need that sort of stronger, more intense flavour. Give that a mix through until the stock pots have dissolved. Each of the stock pots, of 2 of them in here, you dissolve in 500 millilitres of water, so there's 1 litre of water in total in the soup. There are bubbles coming to the surface as this gets to the boil, and the soup is starting to thicken with the flour having been added to the onions and the oil and the butter. Once I added the liquids and brought it back up to the boil, it has changed the consistency from being like water to really being what you would sort of expect a soup consistency to be like. There we go, that's the finished soup, just straight out of the oven, piping hot. Melted cheese on top, lovely crispy croutons. It's hard to believe that something so nice could come from very, very straightforward and just a handful of ingredients, but in many cases that's what cooking's all about. Why not give it a go and enjoy some?